The metal walls of the detention cell hummed with alien technology. Ambassador Sarah Chen sat perfectly still, her hands folded on the cold table, while three towering figures loomed over her. The Kethvar were impressive, 8 feet tall, covered, in scales that shifted from deep purple to silver in the harsh light. Their 4 eyes never blinked as they studied her. Human. The center figure spoke, its voice like grinding stone. I am War Commander Theclon. You will explain why your species refuses to surrender. Sarah looked up calmly. Because we don't want to. The commander's scales darkened. Do not mock us. We have conquered 47 star systems. We have enslaved races that could tear apart mountains with their bare hands. Yet your pathetic species fights on, even when facing certain death. Why? Maybe because we've had practice, Sarah said with a slight smile. Theclon slammed a massive fist on the table. The metal dented. You are insects. Your technology is primitive. Your bodies are weak. Your planet is small and unremarkable. What could you possibly know about warfare that we do not? Sarah leaned back in her chair. Would you like me to tell you a story? Stories are for younglings, sneered the commander on the left, whose name was Vextar. We want tactical information. This is tactical information, Sarah replied. It's about why humans fight the way we do. About why surrender isn't in our vocabulary. About why even now your fleet is in more danger than you realize. The third commander, Zeknal, spoke for the first time. Explain. Sarah's eyes grew distant. It happened over 2,000 years ago on Earth. A small group of warriors faced an impossible battle. The odds were so bad that everyone knew they would die. But they fought anyway, and that fight changed everything. The story begins with 300 men standing in a narrow mountain pass. Sarah continued. They were called Spartans, and they came from a city-state called Lacedaemon. Their leader was King Leonidas. The holographic display in the cell flickered to life, showing Sarah's memories as she spoke. The Kethvar commanders watched, fascinated despite themselves. The Persian Empire was the largest the world had ever seen. King Xerxes commanded over 2 million soldiers, infantry, cavalry, archers, and immortals. His ships darkened the sea. His army was so vast that when they drank from rivers, the rivers ran dry. The images showed endless ranks of Persian soldiers stretching to the horizon. War chariots and siege engines, ships covering the water like a carpet. Against this force stood 300 Spartans, plus about 7,000 other Greeks. They chose to make their stand at Thermopylae, a narrow coastal pass barely wide enough for a few men to stand side by side. In your language it means hot gates. Commander Theclon's scales shifted impatiently. Numbers mean nothing. Superior technology always wins. That's what Xerxes thought too, Sarah said. He sent a messenger to the Spartans. The message was simple. Surrender your weapons, and you will be allowed to live as slaves. A reasonable offer, Vextar rumbled. Leonidas threw the messenger into a pit. The 3 aliens exchanged glances. This was not standard diplomatic protocol. Then Xerxes sent another message, Sarah continued. Our arrows will be so numerous they will block out the sun. Do you know what the Spartan warrior Dienekes said? Silence. He said, Good. Then we'll fight in the shade. The battle began at dawn, Sarah narrated as the hologram shifted to show the narrow pass of Thermopylae. Rocky cliffs rose on one side, the sea crashed on the other. In between, a space barely 30 feet wide. Xerxes sent his Median troops first, 10,000 soldiers with bronze shields and iron spears. They expected to overwhelm the Greeks quickly and move on. The display showed waves of Persian soldiers charging toward the pass, their war cries echoing off the mountains. But something strange happened. The Spartans didn't retreat. They didn't panic. They formed what they called a phalanx, a wall of bronze shields and iron spears. Every man protected the warrior beside him. Every warrior trusted the man at his back. The hologram showed the Spartan formation, a bronze wall of shields with spear points jutting forward like the spines of some metal creature. The Persians, crashed into that wall and broke like waves against rocks. For every Spartan who fell, 10 Persians died. Bodies piled up in the pass until the blood ran down to the sea. Zeknal leaned forward. Impossible. 10,000 against 300? The numbers do not support your story. The narrow pass made numbers meaningless, Sarah explained. Only a few Persians could attack at once. The Spartans had trained for this their entire lives. Every movement was perfect. Every thrust of the spear found its mark. She paused. But more importantly, they knew why they were fighting. For territory, resources, Teklan asked. For their families, their freedom, their way of life. Each Spartan knew that behind him stood everything he loved. If he stepped back, if he broke, if he ran, all of it would be destroyed. The hologram showed Spartan mothers handing shields to their sons, saying words in ancient Greek that the translation matrix rendered as, "Return with your shield," or "on it." By evening, the pass was choked with Persian dead. Xerxes looked down at his army and realized he had gained nothing. 300 men had stopped 2 million. That night, Xerxes called for his elite guard, Sarah continued. They were called the Immortals, 10,000 warriors who had never been defeated. They wore armor of gold and carried weapons of the finest steel. When one fell in battle, another immediately took his place, so their numbers never decreased. The display showed the Persian immortals in their ornate armor, faces hidden behind golden masks that resembled gods and demons. Xerxes told them, "End this embarrassment. Kill every Greek in the pass, bring me the head of their king." Vextar's scales rippled with interest. Now the humans would face true warriors. The Immortals attacked at midnight, Sarah said. They came in silence like shadows with spears. But the Spartans were ready. They had been ready their whole lives. The hologram showed the night battle. Bronze clashing against gold, iron spears against fine steel. Sparks flew in the darkness as weapons met weapons. The Immortals had never faced warriors like this. Every Spartan was a master of combat. They had trained since childhood to fight and die for Sparta. Pain meant nothing. Fear meant nothing. Only duty mattered. Surely the Persians' superior equipment gave them an advantage? Zeknal questioned. Equipment doesn't fight battles, Sarah replied. Warriors do, and no Persian warrior had ever faced an enemy who welcomed death, as long as that death served a purpose. The battle raged through the night. By dawn, the Immortals were no longer immortal. Hundreds lay dead in the pass. The survivors retreated, in disorder, their golden armor stained with blood. Xerxes watched his finest troops flee from 300 men. For the first time, he began to understand what he was facing. The second day brought new horrors, Sarah continued. Xerxes sent wave after wave of his best troops, Ethiopians with obsidian-edged clubs, Sake archers whose arrows could pierce bronze, Indian warriors riding war elephants. The hologram showed the variety of Persian forces, exotic warriors from across the known world, each bringing their unique weapons and fighting styles. All of them broke against the Spartan line. All of them died in that narrow pass. The Spartans fought like machines of war, never tiring, never yielding. Their shields remained locked. Their spears never stopped thrusting. But then Sarah's expression grew grim. That evening, a Greek traitor came to Xerxes. His name was Ephialtes, and he knew of a mountain path that led behind the Spartan position. The 3 alien commanders straightened with interest. Finally, the tactical situation was changing. Ephialtes showed the Persians how to circle around through the mountains. While the Spartans held the pass, 10,000 immortals would attack from behind. The trap would be complete. Then the humans were doomed, Teklan said with satisfaction. Leonidas knew about the path, Sarah replied. He had posted 1,000 Phocian Greeks to guard it. But when the Immortals came, the Phocians panicked and fled. The hologram showed Persian soldiers streaming down the mountain path in the pre-dawn darkness, while Greek defenders scattered like leaves before a storm. A messenger reached Leonidas just after sunrise. The enemy was coming from behind. In a few hours, the Spartans would be surrounded and destroyed. Sarah paused, letting the tension build. Most of the Greek allies chose to leave. 7,000 men marched away, knowing they had done their duty and could fight another day. And The Spartans? Vextar asked, though he already suspected the answer. The Spartans stayed. 300 Spartans remained in the pass, Sarah said softly. They knew they were going to die. They knew no help was coming. They knew that in a few hours the greatest army in the world would crush them like ants. The hologram showed the quiet morning scene. Spartan warriors calmly preparing their weapons, combing their long hair, sharing their last meal. No panic, no despair, just acceptance. Leonidas gathered his men and spoke to them one final time. He said, "Tonight we dine, in hell." The alien commanders were silent, processing this strange human reaction to certain death. The final attack came from all sides, Sarah continued. Persians poured down from the mountain path while the main army charged through the pass. Arrows fell like rain. The Spartans were surrounded by an ocean of enemies. The display showed the chaotic final battle. 300 men in a shrinking circle fighting against thousands upon thousands of attackers. But something remarkable happened. Even facing certain death, the Spartans never broke formation. They never ran. They stood back to back and fought like heroes from legend. How long did they last? Zeknal asked quietly. Hours. They fought. Until their spears broke, then drew their swords. When their swords shattered, they fought with daggers. When they had no weapons left, they fought with their bare hands and teeth. The hologram showed Spartan warriors pulling Persian soldiers down with them as they fell, choosing to die killing rather than to die helpless. King Leonidas fell with a dozen spear wounds, still trying to reach Xerxes' banner. His men fought over his body, determined that their king would not be taken by the enemy. Sarah's voice grew quiet. At the end, only one man remained standing. Dinakes, the warrior who had joked about fighting in the shade. He was covered in wounds, surrounded by Persian spears, but he would not kneel. The final image showed a lone, Spartan warrior, sword raised, defying an army. The Persians killed him with arrows because none of them dared to come within reach of his blade. So the Persians won, Commander Theclon said. They eliminated the obstacle and continued their invasion. Your story proves nothing except that resistance is futile. Sarah shook her head. Xerxes stood in that pass, looking at the bodies of 300 men who had cost him over 20,000 soldiers. His army was demoralized. His best troops were dead or wounded. His reputation as an invincible conqueror was shattered. But he still had overwhelming numbers, Vextar protested. Numbers aren't everything, Sarah replied. News of Thermopylae spread across Greece like wildfire. 300 Spartans had held off the Persian Empire for 3 days. They had died, yes, but they had shown that Persians could bleed, that the invincible army could be stopped. The hologram shifted to show Greek cities across the ancient world. Athens, Corinth, Argos. In each city, people gathered to hear the story of the hot gates. Greek warriors began flocking to join the resistance. If 300 men could do so much damage, what could 3,000 do? Or 30,000? The Spartan sacrifice had lit a fire that would burn across the ancient world. Meanwhile, Xerxes faced a new problem. He had won the battle, but at what cost? His supply lines were stretched across hostile territory. His army was hungry and far from home. Every Greek city was now preparing for war, instead of surrender. Sarah smiled grimly. The Persians began to realize they had made a terrible mistake. They had awakened something that should have been left sleeping. A few months later, the Greek fleet met the Persian navy at Salamis, Sarah continued. The Greeks were outnumbered 3-1, but they had learned the lesson of Thermopylae. They chose their battlefield carefully, a narrow strait where Persian numbers meant nothing. The hologram showed ancient warships clashing in confined waters, bronze rams smashing through wooden hulls. The Greeks destroyed half the Persian fleet in a single day. Xerxes watched from a throne on the hillside as his ships burned and sank. For the second time, a smaller Greek force had humiliated his mighty empire. The following year, the remaining Persian army was crushed at Plataea. The invasion was over. The empire that had conquered the known world had been stopped by a collection of small Greek city-states. Commander Zeknal leaned forward. Because of 300 dead warriors? Because of what those 300 warriors represented? Sarah corrected. They showed that no enemy is unbeatable. They proved that courage and determination can overcome superior numbers and technology. Most importantly, they demonstrated that some things are worth dying for. She stood up from her chair despite the energy restraints. The story of Thermopylae became legend. For over 2,000 years, humans have remembered the lesson of the hot gates. When faced with impossible odds, we don't surrender. We find the narrow pass, we lock our shields, we stand together. Your species has such stories too, Sarah added, looking directly at Theklan. I've studied your history, the siege of Krathvor, where 100 Kethvar held out for 2 years against the hegemony. The last flight of the Void Riders, when your pilots chose death over surrender. The alien commander's scales shifted uncomfortably. Every species has its Thermopylae moments. The difference is humans remember ours. We study them. We teach them to our children. We carry them into every battle. This is all very inspiring, Vextar said dismissively. But ancient history means nothing in modern warfare. Your primitive weapons cannot harm our ships. Your small fleet cannot match our numbers. Sarah laughed, a sound that made all 3 aliens step back. You still don't understand. The Battle of Thermopylae didn't end with 300 dead Spartans. It began with them. The hologram changed to show a star map, the current disposition of human and Kethvar forces. Right now, your main fleet is traveling through the Kepler sector, heading for Earth. 1,200 ships carrying 3 million soldiers. You expect to arrive in 6 days and demand humanity's surrender. Which you will give, Theklan growled. Or we will glass every city on your planet. Except you won't reach Earth, Sarah said calmly, because you're heading into your own Thermopylae. The star map zoomed in on a particular system, 3 planets orbiting a red dwarf star connected by narrow hyperspace corridors. The Tau Ceti system, 3 worlds, 7 hyperspace entry points. But only one route leads to Earth, and it passes through a bottleneck barely wide enough for 10 ships to travel side by side. Understanding dawned in Zeknal's 4 eyes. You have fortified the passage. Better than that, Sarah replied. We've turned it into a killing ground, hidden weapon platforms, gravity mines, automated defense systems, and in the center, holding the narrowest point. The display zoomed in further, showing a small human fleet deployed in defensive formation. 137 ships. Volunteers, all of them. They know they're outnumbered 10 to 1. They know no reinforcements are coming. They know they're going to die. Then why are they there, Theklan demanded. Because behind them lies Earth. 3 billion humans who refuse to surrender. Men, women, and children who chose to fight rather than kneel. Sarah's voice grew stronger. The crew of every ship in that formation has studied the Battle of Thermopylae. They know what Leonidas said to his men. They know what Dienekes said about fighting in the shade. They know that some battles are worth dying for. Our ships will break through, Vextar snarled. Numbers always win in the end. Maybe, Sarah agreed. But at what cost? How many of your 1,200 ships will survive to reach Earth? How many of your 3 million soldiers will live to see our surrender? She gestured to the star map. More importantly, what happens when word spreads that a handful of human ships bloodied the nose of the mighty Kethvar Empire? What happens when other species realize that you can be hurt? You're bluffing, Theklan said, but his scales had gone pale. Your fleet is too small to matter. Is it? Sarah asked. Let me tell you about Admiral Sarah Mitchell, commanding the Human Defense Force. She's 53 years old, been in space combat for 30 years. Her great-grandfather died at a place called Normandy, leading an invasion against impossible odds. Her grandfather died at a place called Chosin Reservoir, fighting against 10 to 1 odds in the frozen mountains of Korea. The hologram showed a middle-aged human woman in naval uniform, standing on the bridge of a warship. Admiral Mitchell has read every book about Thermopylae ever written. She's studied every battle where smaller forces defeated larger ones. She knows that this isn't about winning. It's about making the enemy pay such a price that victory becomes defeat. The display shifted to show the Tau Ceti system in real time. The massive Kethvar fleet was approaching the outer planets, their ships darkening space like a metal storm. Your scouts have already reported back to War Commander Theklan's flagship, Sarah continued. They've seen the human defensive positions. They've counted our ships. They've calculated the odds. In the hologram, Kethvar reconnaissance vessels transmitted data back to the main fleet. The alien commander studied the tactical situation and found it to their liking. What they didn't see, Sarah said with a smile, were the 30,000 nuclear mines hidden in the asteroid belt, or the railgun platforms disguised as dead satellites, or the fact that every human ship is carrying 10 times its normal complement of missiles. Impossible, Zeknal protested. Our sensors would have detected such preparation. The holographic display exploded into chaos. As the lead Kethvar ships entered the narrow hyperspace corridor, space itself seemed to come alive with fury. Nuclear mines detonated in brilliant flashes, vaporizing entire squadrons. Hidden railgun platforms emerged from asteroid cover, sending tungsten projectiles through the alien formation at significant fractions of light speed. Missile swarms erupted from concealed launchers, turning the space around the fleet into a storm of fire and metal. Impossible, Vextar roared, watching his people's ships die by the dozen. Your technology cannot create such weapons. Human technology, no, Sarah admitted. But we've had 200 years to study the wreckage of every ship you've destroyed. We've learned from every species you've conquered. We've taken the best weapons, the best defenses, the best strategies, and made them our own. The lead elements of the Kethvar fleet pushed forward desperately, trying to escape the killing field. But the corridor was too narrow. The passage, too confined. Ships collided with each other as formations broke apart under the devastating surprise attack. Status report from War Commander Theklan's flagship, Sarah narrated, reading from data that appeared on her wrist display. 237 ships destroyed in the first wave, another 112 badly damaged. The fleet is in disarray. The three alien commanders watched in horror as their overwhelming advantage dissolved into chaos and death. But watch this, Sarah said, pointing to a section of the display where the human fleet was finally visible. 137 ships in perfect formation, advancing into the teeth of the surviving alien fleet. Admiral Mitchell is doing exactly what Leonidas did. She's choosing her ground, making the enemy come to her, using the terrain to negate their numerical advantage. The human ships opened fire as one, their weapons precisely coordinated. Each shot was carefully aimed, each missile perfectly timed. There was no waste, no panic, no disorder. Just professional, deadly competence. Your people are brave warriors, Sarah observed as Kethvar ships fought back with desperate courage. But they've never faced an enemy that welcomed death as long as it served a purpose. The battle raged for hours in the narrow hyperspace corridor. Human ships fought with mechanical precision, each captain knowing that retreat was impossible, and surrender was unthinkable. When their weapons were exhausted, they rammed enemy vessels. When their ships were crippled, they overloaded their reactors and died in nuclear fire, taking alien ships with them. The HSS Thermopylae, under Captain Sarah Rodriguez, Sarah narrated, as the hologram focused on a single human destroyer. Surrounded by 12 Kethvar cruisers, all weapons depleted, hull breached in 17 places. Do you know what her final transmission was? The alien commanders watched the tiny human ship, listing badly and venting atmosphere, as it turned toward the largest enemy vessel. She said, "Tonight we dine in hell." The Thermopylae struck the Kethvar flagship at ramming speed. Both ships vanished in a ball of plasma and radiation. The HSS Leonidas, commanded by Captain Marcus Chen, no relation to me, Sarah continued. His ship took a direct hit from a fusion torpedo. Life support failing, reactor going critical. He could have evacuated his crew. The hologram showed the crippled human vessel, its hull glowing white-hot from internal fires. Instead, he piloted his ship directly into the center of a Kethvar formation. 47 enemy vessels destroyed in the explosion that followed. Ship after ship, the human fleet died in glory and fire. But each death cost the aliens dearly. The narrow corridor was becoming choked with wreckage, making it impossible for the surviving Kethvar ships to maneuver effectively. By the end of the 6th hour, Sarah said quietly, only 12 human ships remained operational. but they had destroyed over 800 alien vessels. The corridor was a graveyard of metal and dreams. What happened to the survivors? Zeknal asked, his voice barely a whisper. Admiral Mitchell's flagship, the HSS Mullen Labe, made its final stand at the narrowest point of the passage. She and her crew fought off the remaining Kethvar ships for another 3 hours. The display showed the last human vessel, scarred and battered, holding the center of the corridor as alien ships swarmed around it like angry insects. When her weapons were gone, she broadcast one final message to the approaching enemy fleet. Come and take them. The HSS Mullen Labe vanished in a fusion fire that lit up half the star system. But its sacrifice had bought precious time for the automated defenses to rearm and redeploy. In the end, only 187 Kethvar ships escaped the Tau Ceti bottleneck, Sarah said, as the hologram showed the aftermath of the battle. Debris fields stretched for millions of kilometers. The space around the hyperspace corridor looked like a mechanical graveyard. 187 ships, she repeated, out of 1,200. Your invasion force has been reduced to barely 15% of its original strength. Commander Theklan's scales had turned completely white, a sign of shock among the Kethvar. Impossible. No species has ever inflicted such casualties on our fleet. But that's not the worst part, Sarah continued remorselessly. You see, the Battle of Tau Ceti was broadcast live across 17 star systems. Every species in this part of the galaxy watched 137 human ships destroy an invasion fleet 12 times their size. The display shifted to show alien worlds throughout the local stellar neighborhood. On each planet, the local population was watching the battle feeds with growing excitement and hope. The Zephyrians, whom you conquered 15 years ago, they're watching. The Nexari, who surrendered without a fight when your ships appeared in their system, they're watching too. The Vorthan Collective, the Epsilon Traders, the mechanical consciousness of Tau Eridani, they're all watching. Sarah's smile was sharp as a blade. Do you know what they're thinking as they watch your invincible fleet burning in space? That they made a mistake, Vextar said quietly. That they should have fought. Exactly. Right now, on 43 different worlds, resistance movements are forming. Weapons are being gathered, plans are being made. The species you've conquered are remembering that they used to be free. The hologram showed secret meetings in dark places, aliens of a dozen different species planning rebellion, inspired by the human example at Tau Ceti. Your empire was built on fear, Sarah explained. The fear that resistance was hopeless, that your technology was too advanced, your fleets too powerful, your numbers too great. That fear is gone now. She gestured to the star map, where red indicators were beginning to appear on dozens of worlds. The Thermopylae effect is spreading, faster than your ships can travel. Every victory you've won through intimidation is about to become a liability. 3 days after Tau Ceti, the Zephyrian resistance struck, Sarah continued. The hologram showed bird-like aliens attacking Kethvar, installations with improvised weapons and desperate courage. They destroyed your primary supply depot in the Zephyr system. 2 years' worth of military supplies gone in nuclear fire. The Zephyrian fighters who carried out the attack knew it was a suicide mission. They didn't care. The display shifted to another world. The Nexari followed suit 12 hours later. They seized control of the orbital manufacturing platforms you use to build your ships. It will take months to retake them, if you can retake them at all. Planet after planet erupted, in rebellion. The neat red indicators on the star map were spreading like a virus, each one representing a world where the conquered had decided they would no longer accept conquest. The Vorthan Collective went even further, Sarah said. They didn't just rebel, they declared war. Their entire stellar navy, such as it is, has left port. They're heading for Kethvar space to fight alongside the human fleet. They cannot reach our home systems, Theklan protested. Our defenses are impregnable. Are they? Sarah asked. Because the Epsilon Traders control most of the hyperspace, navigation data in this sector. They've just declared that data classified and unavailable to Kethvar vessels. Your ships are going to have a very hard time finding their way home. The strategic implications were staggering. An empire built on rapid deployment and overwhelming force was suddenly finding itself cut off from its supply lines and facing rebellion on every front. But the most interesting development, Sarah continued, came from an unexpected source. The mechanical consciousness of Tau Eridani has been neutral in every conflict for the past 3 centuries. They don't involve themselves in organic politics. What did they do? Zeknal asked, though he dreaded the answer. They sent a message to Earth. It said, "We have analyzed the tactical data from Tau Ceti. We wish to learn more about human military doctrine. We are particularly interested in the concept of acceptable losses in pursuit of strategic objectives." The implications hung in the air like a sword. The mechanical consciousness commanded the most advanced technology in the known galaxy. If they decided to study human warfare, "Your empire is crumbling," Sarah said simply. "The fear that held it together is gone. Your invincible fleet has been proven very vincible indeed, and every species you've ever conquered is remembering what freedom tastes like." "This is all very dramatic," Commander Vextar said, though his scales were pale with strain. "But you forget, we still hold you prisoner." The detention cell fell silent as the weight of Sarah's words sank in. The 3 Kethvar commanders exchanged glances, their scales shifting through colors that indicated deep thought and deeper concern. Finally, War Commander Theclon spoke. "What do you propose?" "Withdrawal," Sarah said simply. "Return to your own space. Leave the conquered worlds to govern themselves. End this empire of fear and build something better." "Impossible," Vextar snarled. "We are Kethvar. We do not—" "Retreat from inferior species. Then you'll die like every other empire that refused to adapt," Sarah replied. "Ask the Persians how well impossible worked out for them." She activated the holographic display one more time, showing the current strategic situation. Red indicators covered half the known galaxy now. Rebellions, uprisings, and declarations of war spreading like wildfire. "Your choice is simple," she continued. "End this war now while you still have an empire to save. Or continue fighting until every world you've conquered rises against you, until every fleet you send is destroyed, until the Kethvar become a cautionary tale that other species tell their children." "You would trust us to keep such an agreement?" Zeknal asked quietly. "No," Sarah admitted, "but I would trust you to be practical. This war is costing you everything and gaining you nothing. Even if you could somehow defeat the human fleet, even if you could crush every rebellion, even if you could glass every world that defies you, what would you have left? An empire of corpses and ash." She gestured to the star map. "On the other hand, if you withdraw now, you save face. You return to your core worlds with most of your fleet intact. You get to rebuild and reconsider your approach to galactic politics. You get to survive." "And if we refuse?" Theclon asked. Sarah's expression hardened. "Then you face the consequences of teaching humans that diplomacy doesn't work, that peaceful coexistence is impossible, that the only way to deal with alien species is through superior firepower. Is that a threat?" "It's a historical fact,"